Hello and good morning to our listeners from around the world. I want to welcome you to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, as well as on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I am so glad you're here. We have another fantastic hot topic. But even more so, we have a wonderful guest today who I'm going to introduce in just a second. But of course, I've got to get to introducing my amazing co-host first, Sheila Applegate. Good morning, Sheila.
Good morning.
We are at Hump Day, girl.
All right.
How's the week been going?
It's been wonderful.
It-
It really has. I love spring.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. As you know, I've been out in, my backyard and getting out into doing all of that work out there. And it has been glorious. And the plants are like saying, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I took my morning coffee and went for a walk in my yard, and not all of our birds, but so many birds gathered in this one tree and just sang to me. Birds of like all different kinds. It was
They
so
just
cool.
love you.
I love them.
Well, listen, as I said before, we have a fantastic guest today and a great topic. I just want to remind all of our listeners from around the world, listen, we want your questions, we want your comments, your thoughts. This is an interactive conversation. So just post them to either our Facebook or YouTube live streams, and we will include you as we have our conversation today. So why don't we get to introducing our very, very special guest?
Yeah.
Deus Wendrea, formerly known as Dr. Andrea Pennington, is an American integrative physician, psychedelic assisted therapy facilitator, acupuncturist, and creator of the cornerstone process for conscious evolution and the attunement meditation. Deus has written and contributed to 18 different books, including she's the best-selling author of The Top 10 Traits of Highly Resilient People and The Real Self-Love Handbook. She is also an international speaker with over 4 million views of her TED Talks, host of the Conscious Evolution podcast, and has a vast career in global media and documentary filmmaking. So with that, it is my pleasure to welcome to This Morning with Soulivity, Dr. Wendrea Pennington. How are you, girl?
I am well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. No, thank you for being here. All the way from Conference. I'm so glad that you're here. This is just going to be great. We're talking today about something that is near and dear to your heart, which is people expressing self-love with themselves. I mean, like, this is like so vital right now with what's happening across the world. And so my first question to you is, how did this part of your journey begin where you're creating this movement with people becoming more resilient, more loving, and more passionate about themselves?
Great question. My stepping onto the path of really focusing on self-love started out with me working with patients. In the beginning of my medical career, I ran an intensive outpatient program for binge eating disorder right across the DC border in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Wow.
And for many years, I was running these groups 3 nights a week and one on the weekends, and seeing people recover. And at the heart of a lot of substance use disorder and eating disorders is trauma. Childhood trauma often leaves people with this feeling that they're not worthy of love, that they're not worthy of health, that they're not even worthy of being on the planet. And I started to recognize that some of my patients, certainly not all of them, but some of my patients really lacked self-love. And in the people who didn't love themselves, I would see that they would either switch addictions, sabotage their recovery program, or find some other drama in their lives. And it really became curious to me. So I started to dig, I started to investigate. And the most telling thing was I didn't have an eating disorder or substance use disorder, but I did notice that I had some of the same self-talk as some of my.
Wow.
I found out that a lot of the depression I was living with was also tied to a lack of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen my TED Talk, you know I open by asking, could you look in the mirror and say, I love you, me?
Mm.
And when we had our patients doing that in this program, I realized, wow, no, I can't look at myself and just say, yeah, I love you for no reason. All of my sense of self-worth was tied to performance, was tied to getting things right. It was all around perfectionism. And that's when I realized, God, we need to do some work here.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
beautiful. Yeah. I love that you are able to reflect in yourself as you are working with patients or clients, because I think that's one of the attributes that really helps us to reach them where they are. So as you took that journey to exploring that self-worth in yourself and in others, it's really led you also to explore the inner child as well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. What I noticed in my patients and in myself was a lot of those beliefs, those limiting beliefs, and that self-talk were coming from parts of us. You could call it an inner child. In my case, I had an inner teenager, I had an inner toddler.
All our
And
people.
exactly, you have all these internal parts, but my inner toddler really firmly believed that she was not good enough, that she always had to be performing or, proving her worth. And as we started to get into rewriting these beliefs and rewiring the brain, that's when I realized you've got to do work with that inner child. Because even if you, as an adult, you're conscious and you realize, okay, I strayed down this path because of past trauma, and I'm not going to blame my parents anymore. I understand my dad was an alcoholic or my mother was this or that. You get to an intellectual understanding.
Yeah.
And you think I should be good by now. However, those other parts of the psyche, they're still frozen in time.
Yeah.
So you've got to work with the inner child to help it unburden itself of those false beliefs. And in my case, I really did believe that you're not a good girl unless you are getting good grades and following all the rules. There was a whole thing around authority figures. And I did not believe that I was lovable, unless I met certain criteria. And that was because of the way I was raised. It was a very dysfunctional household before my parents got divorced. And, the love that I experienced was very conditional in the home. And so it took a long time for that inner child to hear and to understand that dad got it wrong, mom got it wrong.
Yeah.
As they meant well. They tried to raise their children, but the strictness and the severity and the lack of emotional connection, I had to explain to this inner toddler, they were wrong. So you don't need to keep jumping through these hoops, trying to prove yourself, trying to win love and affection, because they got it wrong.
Right. I love that you pointed out the toddler and the teenager, because in development, they're really the same issue. And that is, are you going to take your power?
Right.
So I think, that's probably common with a lot of people. You mentioned that, you can't get to the healing just by thinking it, that you have to move into your inner psyche, to the unconscious. Do you want to just talk for a minute about how you move in that direction?
Sure. So there are a number of ways that we can connect with these inner parts of ourselves. The ones that I like the most are things like meditation, mindfulness, movement, whether that's conscious movement like yoga or even gardening, walking in nature, journaling, breath work, psychedelic assisted therapy. And so what we're essentially doing is we're finding ways to calm down the active conscious mind so that we can dip in to the unconscious to access these parts. And the reason we need a whole range of ways to get there is because we're each different. We all have our own blocks or resistances. And for me, what I did when I first started this work, I was using an acupuncture protocol, which is called NADA, N-A-D-A. It's the National Acupuncture for Drug and Alcohol Detox Protocol. And in putting in these 5 little needles, what we noticed is that patients would quickly relax, but they would also have this sense of taking a step back.
Wow.
They could see themselves, they could see their behaviors, and they could see their past history from a slightly elevated perspective.
Yeah.
So what we noticed is just with putting in these acupuncture needles and letting people sit for 30 to 45 minutes, they were tapping into what we call witness consciousness. This is what the yogis and the longtime meditators talk about, where you start to realize, I am not my body. I am not these behaviors. I am not this past. I am not a diagnosis. I am not the monkey mind. I am the witness, this soul presence, this consciousness that is here and will always be here. And so for me, getting into these different ways of connecting with what I call the authentic self, which you could call soul or presence or whatever, but that true self is what we have to contact when we want to heal all of these other parts of ourselves.
I'm loving this conversation. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about my own journey, based upon, you know, my parents' relationship, what my mother was going through in terms of her own challenge with mental health illness, and how that reflected with me. And I was over here just kind of waving the white handkerchief, just saying amen, amen, because of the fact that we have to go back to those moments from today in the present moment, based upon with some support, to heal that part of ourselves so that our child can now live in peace and joy and laughter and happiness, because that's also a part of ourselves that we want to express in the present moment. And it's hard to do that when there's so much pain and trauma that exists. So when we come back, I want to ask you about specifically, you know, the importance of how these support mechanisms create a safe space. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we ignore it because it's too painful and that it's too scary. And I'm sure that through the support mechanisms that you're giving people, that's part of the equation. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity with Dr. ANDREA Pennington. Hey there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available
for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoyed the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. We are talking about the real self-love movement with our very special guest, Dr. ANDREA Pennington. And so glad that you're here. When we left off, you were talking about all these different support mechanisms for people to get connected to their inner child, may that be a toddler, a teenager, and such. And I also thought through my own life that part of that process was also the importance of creating a safe space. And I think sometimes we don't talk about that part of like therapy that's there. I think sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm just got to jump right into the pool with my clothes on and all that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a great point, Brian. A lot of us do struggle with facing these tender parts of ourselves because of the pain and the sadness or the grief or the anger that they hold. And whether we're going into psychotherapy or psychedelic assisted therapy with psilocybin or ketamine or what have you, we have to create a sense of safety in yourself.
Yeah.
So it's not just about safety between me and my client or in the space if we're doing group work. It's also about learning how to tune back into your own nervous system to create a sense of safety, or at least know how to bring yourself out of sort of that fight or flight, that panic, that sense of overwhelm that can often come when we're facing old wounds. And so one of the easiest ways that people can learn to start training their nervous system and creating a sense of safety is to begin a breathwork practice. Yeah. So even before I'm going to tell you to meditate, because I know folks will say I'm a bad meditator, I'm a fidgeting, like that's what we all do when we started. But if you can sit for just 5 minutes a few times a day and just follow your breath, you can count the breaths or you can just follow it, 4 counts on the inhale, hold for 2 seconds, and then 6 counts slowly exhaling. And just every time your mind wanders, you bring it back to the breath. When you start going through your to-do list, you bring it back to the breath. When you start asking, am I doing this right? How many numbers did I count? You just start again and you come back to the breath. Because what you're learning to do is take back control. Oftentimes we have parts of us that get activated, some protector part or a manager part that's like, oh my God, we're going to go think about that old wound. Let's distract, where you might start binging, or you might say, oh, let me go do the laundry. The laundry been sitting there for days and all of a sudden, the laundry. I'm telling on myself because procrastination, seriously, procrastination with house chores is definitely one of my mechanisms of getting away
over
from.
here. She been at our house. Been over here looking at our house. Wait a minute.
Yeah. So when you can teach yourself to come back to your breath, to count those breaths, you will start to turn on the relaxation response. We are all familiar with the stress response, the fight or flight that gets us revved up, our blood pressure and our heart rate and our breath rate. When you learn to slow down your breath, you slow down the heart rate, you bring down your blood pressure, and you literally initiate a response in the brain called the relaxation response. Now, the more that you practice that when you're not in a stressful situation, the more likely you will be able to call on that when you get into a tense or frightful situation. So this is where we start. This is where we learn to befriend our own nervous system and to create a sense of safety. And this is also a good time to start inserting other self-talk. Now, we all know what the inner critic says or the inner scaredy cat, but in these moments we can say, I am here and I'm present and I'm not going to leave. because you're training these internal parts to now trust you.
Right.
They may not have actually trusted us. The adult in the room is not always the
Right.
most trustful. Let's be
Right.
honest.
Right.
So we're learning to create trust, and we're learning to create connection. And the best way to do that is to start with your breath.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
You know, I was a therapist, then I left I left to do energy work and meditation and spiritual connection work with people because, like you had said right before we went to break, you can think it, but you can't get over it. And so I love that you're creating a safe space within the self, and the breath is a great way to start. And like you said, meditation. I'm really fascinated in the use of the psychedelic support and how you create that for people in that. Like, how do you take people through that process? Because more and more it's being talked about and used in the therapeutic industry, or what I guess it is the therapeutic industry. That was a slip of the tongue. Environment as we're trying to heal people. I think we're waking up, and I just am fascinated with how you create that setting and help people to do this work through that use.
Well, in the United States, right now, ketamine is legal for psychedelic assisted therapy. Ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic that has very psychedelic properties that can really help people tune in and access wounded parts of themselves for healing. I'm also trained and certified to facilitate with MDMA and psilocybin when those become legal in the United States. I can currently do that in other countries where psilocybin mushrooms are legal. So in Costa Rica, Jamaica, the Netherlands. And so for me, the first thing that we do is exactly what we've talked about. We start to explore the inner landscape through meditation, through journaling, through breath work. Of course, I prepare people. We have, preparation sessions before they even take one of these psychedelic substances. And that way they're really prepared. A lot of people are afraid of psychedelics because they're afraid, it's a hallucinogen. What am I going to see? What am I going to face?
Right.
And
right.
the more time that you spend getting to know your shadow, the less you have to be afraid of. And so the shadow is not just the bad parts of us, the parts of us that we disown or hide or deny, but it's also the good parts. You have a happy inner child. It may have been shoved into the shadow long ago and you don't have access to it, but there are other good parts of you, your creativity, your passion, your confidence. And so that's what we do. We start to create the safe space within, a safe therapeutic alliance between me and the client, or the group space when we do group work. And then you experience these psychedelics, which again, they really help to lower certain egoic barriers so that you can safely and gently investigate, some of these beliefs. For a lot of patients who've had post-traumatic stress disorder or complex PTSD from childhood trauma, there's a lot in there. And it can be quite overwhelming when it bubbles up to the top. And so we tend to go slowly for folks with complex PTSD so that they don't become so overwhelmed from the experience that they don't get the benefit of the experience. Now, I personally have healed from a great deal of childhood trauma using ayahuasca, sitting in ceremony with psilocybin, and to some extent my ketamine experiences as well. And so I'm convinced of its power, and it's why over the last several years I've brought it into my toolkit for working with people.
Dr. Wondra, can you share maybe an experience where you were using these therapies yourself, moving out of the victim state into what I would call a hero state for yourself, right? Where you become your own hero. Just because I want to ground people in that energy of because I think a lot of times we get into the therapeutics, we get into the process, and we forget about the emotional and the feeling state that's going along with all of this as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can share some of my own experience with processing my mother's transition. My mother transitioned from the earth to another life in September of 2021. And I had the opportunity to sit with psilocybin and process. Now, the surprising thing was I wasn't just processing, losing my mother. I actually got to let go of a whole host of childhood beliefs, some of which I didn't even know were there. So, for example, I sat with the medicine, and as it started to take hold, I could feel myself crying, and I felt like, okay, I'm really going to get out some of my sadness. And then I saw this scene. I saw a scene of me as a toddler in the home that we lived in Nevada. Wow. And I could see all of this tension and fighting between my mom and my dad. And my sister and brother were there. And it was like in the vision, this tension was dark. It was like this dark energy floating around the household. And it seeped into little baby me. And in witnessing this scene, I just wept. And I'm like, no wonder you've carried so much darkness, because you didn't have a chance. You didn't stand a chance. And then I saw that as this baby version of me grew up, she carried with her this belief, which I've never consciously thought of as an adult, but there was this sense, this knowing in the psychedelic experience that this baby carried the belief, it's all my fault. And I wept. I just burst out in more and more tears and snot flowing down my face as I connected with this baby version of me. And I said, of course you thought it was your fault. And then it played out. I could see how that belief of it all being my fault also fueled me trying to be the good kid, trying to be the good girl, trying to get everything right. And it persisted all the way up into my adulthood. Wow. And so as I'm sitting with this psilocybin ceremony, and I wept for the me that I was able to give it back. I saw my mother, who at that point had already passed on. So I saw her kind of go off into the sky, and with her went the darkness.
Wow.
And as I saw that darkness leave, I was like, these are her unhealed wounds from her childhood trauma that she had just leaked all over us. She took it away. And I could grab that little toddler version of me and say, you don't have to live with that anymore. So that is something that I never got to in talk therapy. I never got to that in my traditional practice. It was through the power of opening up with psilocybin. And again, seeing things that I had not any conscious awareness of. Now, I will tell you that some of the things I saw in that household, I had to confirm. So I called my sister, who is 12 years older than me, and I said, hey, did this and this happen? And did mom this? And what about our brother? And she said, you can't possibly know that. You were a baby. And yet here I am with a full recollection. And so that's just one example of the power that happens when we can tap into these psychedelic states safely.
Wow. You just touched my heart. I'm remembering that experience where, for myself, when I went back and I literally went to the moment that the decision was made, that I wasn't enough, right? And so I see my inner child with your inner child, with Sheila's inner child. We're all playing now, and it's and saying thank you for doing this work, right? I've been wanting to play. I've been afraid, and I've been wanting to play and laugh and enjoy life, and I couldn't get out of that room, that darkness, right? So thank you for doing this. What's next for you? What's next on your plate, other than enjoying Con for a little bit?
Well, I am hosting retreats in countries where psilocybin is legal. And I love that. I love being able to facilitate these journeys for people in a safe space. So definitely check out my website, ANDREAPENNINGTON.com, and you can sign up, find out about something we call Sacred Psychedelic Saturday, where I host a free harm reduction call on the first Saturday of the month, just to give people a place to connect and get educated and maybe even integrate some of their experiences.
Mhm.
And also, I have a new book coming out on June 6th. It's called Sacred Medicine. It is exploring the psychedelic hero's journey through shamanic rituals and psychedelic ceremonies. And we've got 25 authors from around the world who've each shared and really opened their hearts to share how they have overcome trauma and other wounding through shamanic ritual and psychedelic ceremonies. It is a very heavy book, I will say, because there is a lot of trauma, but
Wow.
there are happy endings.
Right.
But I just have to let you know there's content warnings for suicidality and abuse. But it's really a beautiful testament to what is possible. So I would love for you guys to check out the new book, Sacred Medicine.
Absolutely. And would you come back and talk with us more about that? Maybe we can bring a couple of friends too.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
I love it. Yes. I was being kind. I was about to say you're coming back, but I was decided to ask instead of just telling you. Any final thoughts that you're having around the discussion today that you want to give to our listeners?
I want folks to know that no matter how broken you feel, no matter what you've done in the past or what's been done to you, you can connect with your authentic self and learn to love yourself. You are truly lovable. There is something worth living for in you. So don't give up. It's there. You can uncover it, and it's worth living.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that and for what you're doing.
Thank you both for having me. I've enjoyed this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've been enjoying Dr. ANDREA Pennington. I don't even want this to end. I don't, because this is such another important part of life and living, and that, you know, when you become first aware and then you start doing the work that you have done, that all of us have done that are on this line right now, your life is infinitely more happy, and you just invite in that good that is meant to be, that what life is meant to be. I mean, life is meant to be good. And so thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Listen, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame, living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. We were just talking with Dr. ANDREA Pennington, psychedelic therapist, speaker, and author, and we're talking about the real self-love movement. And Sheila, I'm almost in tears right now, because, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, when she was speaking about doing that regression, going back and bringing back those memories, I couldn't help but remember that journey for myself, and not just the pain, but the freedom that came from that. I was free.
Right. Yeah. It made me think of my daughter, because she was born connected to a past life that
Wow.
wasn't there was some trauma in it, but so I had this beautiful infant that just already was like, I'm not so sure about this world. And I was thinking, that maybe we did a lot of work with that with her when she was a child, but maybe there's still a little piece to go back for her to go back and hug,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you
yeah.
remember that part? Like I know you've done this work too. Do you remember a part of that journey for yourself that you could share? Like,
Yeah. You know what? When I went back in to find the inner child, I actually went back into the womb. I'm thinking
wow.
about my
Yeah.
daughter again, and we were meant to be
Wow.
twins, and then she didn't come through at that point. So there was this abandonment right in the womb that I had
Mm.
to release, and knowing that was really helpful. Not for both of us
Right.
as we went through life.
Right.
I'm exposing her more than I usually do, so I hope she's okay with this. Um, but
Aw.
but also I wanted to say I recently went. So I've been doing this for a large part of my life,
Right.
starting as a therapist, and then even 30 years ago, moving into the energy work because I know it. You can't talk your way out of this. So
Right.
I've been working and healing myself all those years as well, but it doesn't really end because life is traumatic. So we're
Yes.
constantly getting new traumas. And we're protecting ourselves in moments, even into our adulthood. So just last week or the last couple of weeks, it felt like forever, but I unveiled another wound that my twin flame had been killed
Mm.
by a car, a hit and run 17 years ago now. And I thought,
Wow.
I'd already done all the grieving work, but one thing that I didn't get until just last week, it was revealed that because I could never get to the anger of it because we knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be angry with the kids that hit him because I knew that they were part of the process. But I got to the anger like a couple of weeks ago, and it was the anger of just grief, abandonment. And for the first time, I actually imagined the car accident in real life, where
Wow.
before I could every time I
Wow.
visualized it, he was already released. I just watched his spirit watching it, but I could hear the sound and realize the reality of it. And then that anger finally came up. And I realized that I had gotten so angry that I had blocked the ability to receive deep love. Not completely, because I do have a ton of deep love, so I
Right.
hit it well.
Right.
But there
Right.
was a layer underneath that I was holding back from letting people love me because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to hurt that much again.
Mm-hmm.
So, it just keeps going and we can keep exploring more and becoming more brilliant lights.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm glad you talked about the layers aspect of this, right? Because like for me, there was the initial moment that I made the decision, right? That I wasn't good enough, that I
Mhm.
couldn't be that I had to prove myself worthy of
Right.
love and appreciation. This is specifically for my mother. There were some other things that related to my father as well, but a lot of it centered around her because of my emotional connection to her.
Mhm.
And there were other decisions that I'll say that kind of like ripples in a pond, where the pebble hits the pond and then there's ripples that go out from that. And so
Mhm.
even if you get in contact with the initial impact, right,
Right.
there's all these other decisions that you make after that point that are like process kind of things.
Mhm.
Like I decided to become a people pleaser, right?
Mhm.
And that I had to I've I had to work on that being a default,
Right.
right? Very early in my life. I mean, we're talking like 9 or 10, where I was like, oh wow, I'm a people pleaser. right? And keep working on that and working on that and working on that. And I had to create, again, what I've been taught is you create a new normal, right? That decision point is always there, right? Where you can choose to go that route. But going through all this work, you choose to act differently, to make different decisions because of the result of that. And so, wow, yeah, and that this is a lifelong kind of thing where you're integrating all of that which happened. Because, like, for me, I mean, that happened almost 40 years ago, at more than that, for 45 years ago. And so, we've learned other things from that point till now. And so that layers thing, don't ever, when folks, when you say, oh, well, I'm over that, I'm done with that. Right. Number one, be specific in terms of what you think you've mastered, because it's more mastery than you're over it. And then two, you're more than likely not over it.
Right. And even when you have that unveiling and like even just talking about the last couple of weeks when I reached that deeper understanding and released that moment, that block, I felt amazing for a while.
Oh, man.
But then now a week into it, it's like, oh, this is real now. Like, I gotta let people keep loving me this deep, even on these days or in this moment.
Absolutely.
And I think in any situation, whether you're using meditation or energy work or psychedelic, to go in there and release that, it's an incredible release. And then you still have a process on the other side.
Absolutely. And integrating that into your life as the new normal, right? One other thing that I was thinking about this, and I think that you'll laugh when I say this, just because someone else goes through their journey, your journey, you can't make your journey their journey. So like, for instance, like people say, oh, well, Dr. Wandrea went through this thing with her parents. Oh, well, that must be what I went through. Right. And so you say, well, I'm just going to take what she said and try to make that my own without doing the work, without going into, what's happening, and you're intellectualizing what your current situation is. That does not work, folks.
Right.
That don't work. There's no way around doing the work. And that you'll discover, like Sheila, you had your experience and your awareness and the results of that awareness are different than mine. I made different decisions that you did. I mean, at the very end of the day, it's about love, right? And withholding love. But that expresses itself in so many different ways.
Right. Absolutely. We're all unique.
Absolutely. Listen, why don't we take a quick break? And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll go into some final thoughts.
Sounds great.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I just love that commercial.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Sheila, any final thoughts that you're thinking of right now?
Well, I'm thinking we do need Dr. Wandrea to come back, if she will, because, we talked about how this can work, and she talked a little bit about how she offers this. And I think if people are exploring using the psychedelics as part of their healing process, reaching out to her is a wonderful choice.
Yeah.
going into it on your own would be very different, and you can't control control that.
Right.
So we didn't get to hear how she helps people focus while under the influence of a psychedelic,
Yeah.
but that's an art in itself. So I just wanted to make sure people understand that this is a process, and if you are using that for healing old wounds or traumas, that it's important to have someone guide you that knows what they're doing if you're unexperienced in that.
Absolutely. Do not do this on your own. Do not do this on your own.
And don't have, and again, you can't really have too many expectations, whatever way we're doing it. If I'm leading a meditation for someone to go in, I do that interactive meditations, which is similar, but if they try to control it and think they know what they're going to do, it's not going to work, right? So we always have to be open to let the process unfold. Our brain wasn't able to get us out of it before, so we can't take the brain all the way with us, right? Can't be in charge.
And that on of itself is a defense mechanism.
Exactly.
Right. Like, I was thinking about that. One other thing that I would love when Dr. ANDREA comes back is, different therapies work for different people, and that you don't necessarily have to go into the psychedelics. Maybe energy works better for you. It can open you up, including breath work or mindfulness kind of techniques. They're all like great. The main part is, I think, if you haven't even tried talk therapy yet, I think making the leap into something else that maybe you in of yourself may think it's extreme, don't force yourself to do that.
Right.
Do something that's safer. One other thing I would say is make sure the person that you're going to seek support is someone who's really qualified. So really interview, really ask questions about what they do, how they do it, get information from other people about their experience with that person who is a practitioner or a therapist, whoever it is. Because I've also found that people who have just gone to somebody who says they're a therapist or just says that they do this stuff, and they haven't done like the study, right? They don't have like a long client list of people who are saying, yes, I've been through this, it's okay, it's safe, I've got a lot of benefit out of it. That can be really detrimental. And again, there's a part of us that doesn't want this to work.
Right. It's a very strong part of us.
Exactly. And so, that in itself can be a defensive measure, so that you are sabotaging and telling yourself, well, I tried it and it didn't really work. See, I knew it wasn't going to work. And so I'm going to go back to being in pain and what is safe for me in being that victim, right? Staying in that state of, well, I know what to expect out of this life based upon these decisions. I don't know what I'm going to get if I do this other thing.
Right.
So just thoughts about that too. And I'm sure, Sheila, I'm sure you've gone through that process and have been asked questions. Therapists, and other.
Absolutely. I mean, you want to make sure you're resonating with the person, even if they're highly qualified. If it's not a resonance, it's not your person.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. We still got a lot of stuff going on here at Soulivity.com. And so, Sheila, what's happening with you?
Well, I have some exciting news. I have a book coming out. Zach and I are in our healing modality or energy modality fractal illumination actually was brought to us through the spirit of ayahuasca, though I wasn't anywhere near the plant at the time, but that energy came through me naturally, and that is actually where fractal illumination started. So we have a group coming up that we're gathering on June 3rd, and then on June 6th, the book that we will be featured in, it's an energy healing oracle, is being released on June 6th or 7th, but right around that time. Yep. So that's really exciting news. And then this afternoon at 11 a.m. Eastern time, we have our next Joy Keepers Cafe and meditation, and that is free. And we will get the link right up here for you. You can go to joykeepers.org/cafe and sign up and for free, and then you'll get the link to join.
Cool. I'm bringing that up so that people can see it, because I love the Joy Keeper.
I just put it on the thing for you, Brian. I got so caught up in Dr. Wendrea that I didn't get ready for you.
No problem. No problem. That's how we do it here. It's all good. And guys, please, everybody, go reserve your seat today for the Joy Keepers Cafe. Man, I just love them. I just love you guys. I mean, holding joy in our space is so important, and that's exactly what you guys do.
Yeah, we really do have a wonderful time. It's a real beautiful group of people from around the world that come together for a meditation and just to chat and get to know each other a little bit.
Well, I love our chats together.
Me too. Let's do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, let's do it again tomorrow. Absolutely. Listen, everybody, we've got another great show happening tomorrow, so please join us. Also, follow us on social media and join our mailing list by visiting the This Morning Soulivity site on our website. And on behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you for joining us for this episode. And we hope that you come back and join us every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern for our live broadcast, or you can listen at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday and Friday on KMET 1490 AM radio for all of you on the West Coast. So until next time, keep having real conversations that empower, and we'll see you again. Bye.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written